new seat here is our S3 Max, and it takes our proven 8-inch travel suspension module for the vertical travel and adds a lateral access to it. And this is something we started talking with SOCOM for a couple years back, and they're wanting to mitigate the lateral impacts, not just the vertical impacts.
This is Greg Trotwine. I'm with Maritime Reporter TV. We're here in New Orleans. We're at the International Workboat Show, and we're here with Gerrett of Shockwave to discuss Shockwave, the company, and their brand new seat, which they're showing off to the workboat market. So, Sean, a pleasure to have you. I'm sure many watching this know the Shockwave name well, but why don't you just give us a 50,000-foot overview of the company today?
Thanks, Greg. Welcome to the Shockwave stand here. So we started developing shock mitigating seats for the marine environment in 2001. First contract with U.S. Coast Guard in 2004, 2005. And we've got some 5,000 plus seats that we supplied to Coast Guard, a couple thousand between the Navy and SOCOM. And so we've been at this game for a long time. The product continues to evolve and keeping up with the boats going faster and the accelerations on the boats with the larger motors. So we're having to up our game and provide seats that can mitigate more shock than ever. The new seat here is our S3 Max, and it takes our proven 8-inch travel suspension module for the vertical travel and adds a lateral access to it. And this is something we started talking with SOCOM for a couple years back, and they're wanting to mitigate the lateral impacts, not just the vertical impacts. And we looked at it, and the easiest way was a low pivot system. Seemed natural, but when we looked at it closer in computer simulation, it actually did the opposite effect. It increased the low pivot seat, so if the pivot point is below your bottom, your head's on top of the pendulum, and it's actually increasing the lateral forces side to side. So the solution was to come up with a high pivot. So now you have a pivot up here above the operator's head, but that doesn't work in a boat. You can't have a seat suspended from the ceiling of the vessel. So at the end of the day, we came up with a virtual high pivot that's inside the suspension module, a virtual linkage that simulates a high pivot. And that allows the seat to articulate back and forth while stabilizing the head of the operator in the seat. So we're trying to keep the head stable and not have it rocking back and forth, which creates a whiplash effect. And so that's what we've done here. And we patented this, and patent pending, and I think it's probably the biggest step forward in shock mitigating seats in the last 20 years.
The seat, obviously, you're patent pending. What are the key enabling technologies? I mean, obviously, there's a lot that goes into this seat, but what are the key enabling technologies to do what we just discussed?
Well, I mean, all of this is a collaboration with operator feedback, user groups, and working our technologies, in design, and you don't hit a home run right away on this. There's a lot of base hits that come up to and strikeouts that along the way of getting to this. So it's an evolution over the 20 years that we've been building and learning and expanding the product offering and refining that brings us to where we're at today. And this is the top of that, the pinnacle of where we're at in the industry right now.
That's awesome. So when you look at the market today, obviously it's very broad, it's very international. When you look at the opportunities, where specifically, what's the sweet spot for these types of seatings?
Well, shock mitigation as a whole used to be just on the pointy end at the top of the performance scale. We think about special boat operators, and that's where this seat is targeted first and foremost, but that has trickled down, and the size of the market, that pyramid, it's moved down. And we have products like this here that are suspension based, that's available for a very reasonable price that somebody can put their existing seat on and upgrade their recreational fishing boat or pleasure boat to reap the benefits from the shock mitigation. Obviously, that's not quite the same performance as this seat, but it makes a big difference and enables people that may already have a bad back to get out and enjoy themselves on the water, or somebody just prevent them from getting a bad back in the first place.
Yeah,
So,
well, I'm on the water a lot personally myself, so I can attest to that. I'll have to look at that.
well, we're not getting younger, so if we can, level the playing field, and especially with the larger engines these days, the boat's going faster than ever. This is a critical piece of kit that's going to make the difference of a safe and enjoyable day on the water.